So Kathirweli Tsunami Reconstruction Project. So as many of you will be aware, there was a tsunami in, I think it was 2008 was the year, but a number of years ago there was a tsunami, and actually one of the areas it impacted really badly was the east of Sri Lanka. And as a result of that tsunami, it had devastating impacts on the community in that part of the country, and there was a lot of infrastructure damage, and there was also a lot of damage to a lot of the existing irrigation infrastructure for that part of the country. And in addition to that, this part of Sri Lanka is 2004 was the tsunami, but in addition to that, the recent civil wars left critical infrastructure in a poor condition. So they had the Tamil Tigers War in Sri Lanka, and as a result of that, many people left that part of the country and moved elsewhere. So a lot of the infrastructure was left dormant and deteriorated significantly, and also some of it was damaged during the war as well. So we've been in some of the key reasons for us focusing on this project are that tsunami event, the civil wars, the condition of the infrastructure there, and the impacts that is having on the community at the moment. And the fact that there's unreliable water support sources for the domestic consumption and the local agricultural community. So post the Civil War, we've seen a lot of the Sri Lankan residents moving back to that part of the country. And as they've moved back, they put a lot more stress on the water supply assets, and that's been something that's been of concern. So you can see on this map here the area that we're talking about, and basically at the top of the map is an overflow area, and from there water is released, and that water is used throughout the area for irrigation purposes, but also the community offtakes and is located adjacent to those riverbanks in a lot of the different areas, and the impacts that are happening in the community are really to do with saltwater intrusion, the groundwater, unreliable supply for irrigation, and thirdly, the actual the third area there is really to do with the saltwater intrusion. So how did we find out about the project? Arup has a partnership in the Australasia region with Engineers Without Borders, and we've been doing a lot of work with them in remote communities in Australia. And one of the things we wanted to do is really build that partnership up in Singapore as well. So we've been looking at projects around the region where we can support them, and they've identified this project and they've been focusing on it. So this is the first project where we've been providing technical support to them. And some of the key tasks we've been involved in is developing a flood model and assistance in designing the flood mitigation infrastructure, providing training and assistance in developing designs for affordable rainwater collection and treatment facilities, and providing guidance on the groundwater infiltration testing. And that groundwater infiltration is obviously, the saltwater infiltration of the groundwater is impacting the quality of water in the wells, particularly in the dry season. So to date, and this project is underway, and a number of people in the office have been working on it, including Brendan and myself and Ming Yong. The work that we've done is we've had an initial site visit, we've met with the authorities, and we've given them a presentation on the problems and challenges that are faced in that part of the world, and we've actually talked to them about different approaches that they can adopt, and got all the stakeholders on board. One of the challenges they face is actually getting the support of the different government agencies. We've installed flow gauges in the project area to determine the river flows. So up until, it's very difficult to do a flood model if you don't have the baseline data. So we've advised them whereabouts in the river system they need to put in these gauges, where they need to do surveys of cross sections of the river, and that information will really support the data we need for that flood modelling. And then obviously we've been providing guidance and assistance in testing of the water quality of groundwater. So with respect to the groundwater, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that there's been saltwater intrusion, and at certain times of year the water is not suitable. The water is not suitable for drinking. But they don't actually have any data. They don't have any testing data on how to understand the quality of the water and when it's when it's inappropriate, which wells are suitable. So what we've been doing is getting them to do testing in the groundwater wells throughout that area and map where the saltwater intrusion's coming up to, and that gives them a baseline of what the current condition is now, and they can monitor over the future to see whether it's continuing to encroach, and they can also look at the seasonality and what's happening in the different seasons, and whether it's a lens of saltwater intrusion, and below that is acceptable, or whether it's throughout the groundwater table. So having identified a lot of that baseline data, the next step really has been to work with them to identify what the next steps for them are as a community. So gathering that baseline data will enable us to do the flood modelling, and we're working with our Singapore team and also with some of our specialists from the Melbourne team to do that. Developing a sustainable water supply for the local community. So that groundwater assessment will enable us to really work out what the real impact of that saltwater intrusion is into the wells and therefore the community supply, and we can make some recommendations on how they manage that. Recharging the groundwater table, for example, is a key thing to do to help manage that saltwater intrusion. And we're working with some of our hydrogeologists, specialists in Brisbane and the UK on that particular task. And assessment of the water storage tanks. So traditionally, along the river system, they have what they call irrigation tanks, but they're basically natural dams. We could refer to them as dams, and in the wet season they divert the water into these dams and they use them for supply. But the neglect of those areas has meant that they haven't been able to. A lot of them are non-serviceable and need upgrades, and similarly, the capacity of them isn't necessarily suitable. So they're not suitable because it cracks and the water seeps into the groundwater table. They're filled up with rubbish over the years, etc. So repairing those tanks and getting an accurate survey of what the capacity is and therefore how to have a reliable supply is very important. And finally, stakeholder engagement. So ensuring the local and the federal government's on board with what we're doing, the local communities on board is really important. We've been working really actively with EWB in that process. So to date it's been a very successful process, and some real positive steps are being made in Sri Lanka. But we're looking forward to seeing that project move forward, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that in the future. The second project that I wanted to talk about before Gabrielle speaks is the Sanishop Project. And as I mentioned, the Sanishop Project really focuses on the rural populations in Southeast Asia, and some of you may be aware, but less than 10% of the population in rural Southeast Asia have access to proper sanitation. Poor sanitation obviously often leads to poor health, especially amongst women, and sickness. And if it's done incorrectly, it can actually affect households' clean water sources as well. So often you'll see toilets or open defecation in areas which leach into the groundwater table and then contaminate the groundwater and affect people's water supply. And lack of sanitation is also a social problem. So having open defecation areas often leads to safety problems for women in those communities. Hopefully you can... I don't know if my shouting's any better, but hopefully with those open defecation areas, they make women susceptible to being attacked by other people in communities. So it's often a safety risk for women as well, and a pride issue because there's a source of shame in having to not have a toilet to go to. So how are we helping World Toilet Organisation in this Sanishop program? So we've been providing technical advice, and this advice has been over the last 2 years in the process of rolling out a social franchise model for sanitation, which is called Sanishop within rural Cambodia, Vietnam, and India. And our role has been to provide technical advice on alternative sanitation designs to suit the various communities, and part of that's been looking at how do we make it affordable? What are the local materials that are available? What's the local economic situation of those communities? Do you have different models of toilets, for example? So in the in the Indian communities we've been in, there's obviously varying levels of wealth, and we've developed up a series of different designs at a series of different costs to suit the different needs of those communities. But whereas in Cambodia and Vietnam, there've been more basic designs. So providing guidance and expanding World Toilet Organisation's presence in Cambodia. And we've been, on a recent trip, we linked them up with, actually with Engineers Without Borders and Live and Learn. And Live and Learn are working in the floating community. So it's a very different area from where World Toilet Organisation's been working. But these floating communities, the water level rises up to 9 metres. So they live basically in very basic houseboats. At the moment, they defecate into the river, they swim in the river, they drink from the river, they cook from the water in the river. So it's a very poor health situation. So coming up with innovative solutions for those floating communities is really important to help improve the water quality and therefore the overall health. So we've been encouraging World Toilet Organisation to push into those areas which are of even more need than where they are at the moment. And up to date, they'd seen it as a problem that was too hard, but they've now recognised there's solutions that can be developed through this social franchise model and be viable. And providing guidance on the construction of sanitation design and the social franchise model. So I just talked about that in a bit of detail too. So you can see in the photo to the top right some of the basic toilet designs and the moulds that they use, and it's a very basic toilet block that they have in their communities. And often what they do is the toilet has 2 tanks, and you'll have a valve where you'll fill one tank first, and then you'll turn off the valve and go to the other tank, and so that gives the waste time to decompose and be used as fertiliser, for example, in the future. So it's quite an effective process, but it's been challenging explaining to them how to do that. So you can see in the diagram that I was talking about the outlet to the pit and the 2 tanks in the bottom right hand corner here. So we've talked a bit about the work we're doing in Cambodia. In terms of Vietnam, we've been working in the Mekong Delta, and they've got flood-prone areas there. And the designs they hadn't catered. So we went and did a review of the designs. They didn't cater for the flooding and the impact that would have on the spreading of the waste. So developing a design which was sealable for those communities, participating in training programs for suppliers and retailers of World Toilet Organisation's sanitation system in Orissa, India, which is on the east coast of India. And I mentioned that relationship between Live and Learn and World Toilet Organisation and EWB for the floating communities. So it's been a really successful program, one that's been rolled out in multiple countries and is actually continuing to grow very quickly. So it's been exciting to see that. So moving forward, the intent, and the photo up to the top right here is some of the floating communities, but there's over 1 million people that live in these really poor conditions in Cambodia, and these poor quality rafts, and with these poor health conditions. But moving forward, that's one of the areas we want to focus on. So is to provide that technical advice to World Toilet Organisation, Live and Learn, for their rollout of Sanishop within the floating communities in Cambodia. And you can see how that system works to an extent, in that basically in each house there'll be a toilet where they capture the waste in a bucket, and then it gets picked up and gets taken to a centralised facility in the community, and they harvest the biogas from the sludge and use that biogas for power for their houses, so for lighting and you can. None of these floating communities have any power supply either. So it's about providing not just the sanitation solution, but providing a power solution to improve their quality of life. So having that biogas waste to energy solution for the floating communities and providing technical inputs into that, and looking at how, and working with World Toilet Organisation to give them a business case for how they can use that sanitation system, not just in the floating communities in Cambodia, but we're now looking at how do they roll that out into Bintan Island, Indonesia, because there's similar floating communities there and they've got a very similar problem. So the solution can be applied and used elsewhere as well. All right. So the third project we'd like to share on today is the Tana River Life Foundation work, and Gabrielle's kindly offered to join us and present on the project and where we're up to with that. So Gabrielle is, as I mentioned before, is from the Tana River Life Foundation, CEO of that organisation, and I'd just like to encourage you to welcome him now, and I'll just pass over the mic. So thank you, Gabrielle.
Hi, afternoon everyone. Thanks to Daniel, Sonia, I think Aihui, was it Aihui?
Yes.
They helped us last year on one of our projects, and Celia invited me over to share with you all the work we are doing, since Arup has helped us in some way on an ongoing project that we have. I myself, I'm a Malaysian, but I was Singapore resident for 15 years. I worked in this building before. I was tax accountant by training with Arthur Anderson. But I've been in Kenya for 18 years now. I'm not the CEO, I'm just the founder of it's an NGO I set up in Kenya, and it's called Tana River Life Foundation. The idea is to help people find solutions to their problems, to understand which is a problem, what is a problem, and what is not a problem, and to go forward that way. At the end of the day, a lot of emphasis is on building strong character, good young men and women, so that they can go on to help their communities. We use 4 ways. One is education. That's the project that Arup helped us with, because we emphasize a lot on providing more affordable quality education. A lot of furniture in our district is from Singapore schools actually. We bring over desks and chairs every year. We have a bursary program. We have built a secondary school there with first science lab, first library in the area. The other tool that we use is sustainable agriculture. This is to help people to know that your kids can actually eat better without waiting for food handouts, just by working on the land. We have a farm, 15-acre farm. We do poultry, fish breeding, beekeeping. We have livestock. And it's all worked by the youth. Any youth who wants to go on to college sponsorship has to volunteer here for 18 months, and they learn how to do this. And they eat better, they can pay for food for home, they can repair their roofs, they can buy their moms a mattress, you know. Another tool we use is entrepreneurship. We carry this out in Singapore every year. We collect used items from friends here, and we ship it over, and we pass it to a group of women, and they sell these items, and from that profits that they make, they can actually pay school fees or pay medical bills or repair their homes. They are not given the items for free. It's a small portion that goes back to pay for import duties. Then the last arm is formation. I think this is the most important one. Like I said, in building strong characters. We have a project called Emmaus Center Project. That's the project that Arup helped us with. Is to build a school, is to build a community center, a hostel, and an admin center over 3 years. At the moment, we're building the school. This was originally designed by IDAS, and then the structural design was provided by Arup. So over there, when you want to build a school, you have to clear the land first. You start from scratch. We were given 12 acres by the local community. This was in 2011, and it's all done by the youth, the bush clearing and all that, including uprooting trees. It was all manually done. We cleared just the area of that 15 acres that we wanted to build on. That's about 5 acres. We left the remaining 10 with wildlife, still bush. And then we got the leveling done. This was also in December 2011, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. Now, we are at the highway between Malindi to Lamu. Malindi is a tourist resort, very popular with Italians. Lamu is where they're building a second port. Our area, Tana River District, is the lowest for national exams, has the poorest educational infrastructure. So what's happening is that a lot of jobs are coming in, a lot of development is coming in, but a lot of our youth are not being able to participate in that. So our girls will end up working maybe in bars, and our guys maybe will be unloading lorries. So we're building it there to try to improve on the entire education infrastructure from nursery level upwards to prepare the kids for the future development. This was the groundbreaking. Those are our secondary school kids. So we had a groundbreaking before we started. This was in August last year. We involved the local community. I think the project is done in a way that the entire local community actually owns the project. They feel part of it, so that if we do better, they feel that the community as a whole has actually gone forward. We tried to also maximize the donor funding. So we got a lot of manual labor from the local community. This was in October, November. It helped people to actually earn something for Christmas. A lot of them are youth who are unemployed, women who are unemployed, and it's the men, the women, and the youth who actually did the digging of the trenches and the entire foundation here. It was all done manually. This was after 4 days. This was another stage. We hope that once the school is fully occupied, we'll be having over 450 kids, because it'll have 3 years pre-primary and 8 years primary education. That's the design. Well, that's the artist's design. We hope we'll come to 80% of what is shown here. This was the original architectural design was provided by IDES, and I think Alan roped in Arup, and Arup provided the structural design last year. So we're building this as a design and build contract over in Kenya. For the funding, raising it in stages, 3 phases, and there is actually a foundation from Malaysia, and they have committed to support dollar for dollar. So I raise half, and they provide the other half. We are not builders. I'm not a builder. This is the first building that we are doing, and I wanted to do it as right as we could. And we need a lot of help from professionals, because it's a design and build contract. It's my first time doing a design and build. I realized that it's actually very unfair for us as the customer or the employer. So I've been lucky. I've got help. This is a guy from Singapore, retired contractor. He came last month. He did markings for us. We met this Chinese engineer. He's a civil engineer, and he actually travels 200 kilometers every time we have a site meeting to advise us, and then goes back for free. So we are hoping to get help like this as we go on building, so that, you know, we can actually do a 90% job, let's say. So, well, that's the final slide, I think. So the whole idea of this whole center is to build individual lives so that you can build an entire community. Connected to that, we have a literacy program working with National Library in Singapore. They're sending us 2 librarians in May to help my youth and my staff to actually computerize our library system. We have a lot of books. They're very good books from Singapore, about 10,000 books. It's all in container. I want to have a proper, simple system of database and borrowing system. So they're coming over. I got sponsors for the airfare. I got a computer and all that. We would like to do it properly, have a librarian, maybe pay them 100 Singapore dollars a month for to run it properly. And we will do a reverse mobile. We'll actually be busing in kids from all the public schools in the area to use that one facility. So if you have so much funds, you can build one good facility, and then you provide a means for as many kids as possible to use that one facility. So we're doing it that way. Now, this was an idea. This actually helps us. You know, your old phones, not your smartphones, your old phones that is lying in your drawers, bicycles, suitcases. We can actually ship them over and sell them, and we can actually raise funds to maybe pay for that first item. The other help that I hope we can get, like I said earlier, is anyone who wants to visit us during that stage of construction. This, when we're doing the first floor slab or when we're doing the roofing structure. These are all very new designs over in our place. If people like you who are trained, qualified, and you know how it should be done, if you come to visit us, we'll provide your accommodation and our local food and local transport. And come and you can visit us for a week, for 2 weeks. While we are constructing, you can actually advise me and my staff, my young staff, on how to monitor the construction that's going on. And you can help us to monitor what the contractor is doing. So that's my appeal to all of you. Otherwise, thanks a lot again to Daniel and team, and Celia. Good day.
Thanks, David.